Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. If you have concerns about accessibility around the Strait area, or you have people in your family or your neighbors that are concerned about accessibility, you might want to tune in to this week's show. That's because it's concentrating on the municipal accessibility plans that have to be submitted to the provincial government by the end of this month. We are going to be talking to three people who have been working hard on this file right here in the Strait area. They'll include the co-chairs of Richmond's Accessibility Committee, Warden Amanda Mombourquette and Maxine David. And we'll also speak to the Mayor of Port Hawkesbury, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, about the work that her Accessibility Committee has been doing. Let's have that discussion right now here on Roundtable. So to begin this conversation about municipal accessibility plans, I'd like to begin by asking the co-chair of the Richmond Accessibility Committee, Warden Amanda Mombourquette, who's here with her co-chair Maxine David, to tell us a little bit about what the process involves and why it's so important to get it all together at this specific point in time. Amanda, could you get us going, please?
Sure. Some time ago, Nova Scotia passed an Accessibility Act. And under that act, really, certainly municipalities are considered prescribed organizations. And so we were provided a deadline by the province of Nova Scotia to ensure that our municipal facilities would be fully accessible before the year 2030. And that deadline applies across the province to any business or organization that accepts the public onto its premises. For municipalities specifically, part of our suite of deadlines isn't just that 2030 piece. It's also that, by the end of March last year, we needed to make sure that we had an accessibility committee, an advisory committee in place. And then by the end of this March coming, in 3 weeks, I'm just looking at my calendar, our requirement is to have an accessibility plan submitted to the provincial government.
Okay, so that explains where we're going. Can you tell me just right now how things are going in terms of Richmond County and its Accessibility Committee getting that plan together?
Yeah, well, I think it's been going great guns, and we've been working with a consultant now for a number of months. I shouldn't say a consulting team of multiple companies. They've just put so much effort into this. The consulting group is called Intelligent Futures. And Intelligent Futures is partnering with Level Playing Field, which includes a whole diverse group of individuals between the two organizations, people who, have all kinds of different backgrounds, people with lived experience, you name it. And so it's really interesting to be able to work with these folks to help us make sure that we're doing consultation in a way, although in a pandemic, but still in the most accessible way possible, and then putting this plan together with that kind of lived experience at the center of our focus.
All right, well, we'll pick up a little more about the consultation side of things and what you folks have been able to learn in Richmond County in just a moment. I want to shift things over to Port Hawkesbury just briefly. Brenda Chisholm-Beaton is the mayor of Port Hawkesbury joining us here today and the co-chair of her town's Accessibility Committee. Brenda, what can you tell us about how things have been going for you folks in terms of getting this information together and how the plan is coming together at this stage of March?
Absolutely. So what was pretty core, I guess, at the onset was, really striking a committee of citizens who have experienced different kinds of disability or have experienced different kinds of challenges, whether it's sight or auditory or physical disabilities. So we really want to make sure that we do have at least 50% of our committee members that are able to speak in terms of first voice. And then we did, so far we had, like Amanda has mentioned, we had to be a little creative around how we are launching and making sure we're collecting data from the community in a way that is creative in the midst of a global pandemic. So we've been collecting data in a couple of different ways. And one way that we really, hit the ground running was a social media page called Port Hawkesbury Accessibility. So what we essentially looked at as a committee is we kind of, created a bit of a spectrum of what accessibility looks like from different purviews, So like all the ways we live, all the ways we move, all the ways we consume, all the ways we work, and we kind of, and built environment and outdoor built environment. And then we kind of use those segments to kind of, poll citizens from the community. So for example, for outdoor built environment, I'll use Granville Green, which is a 25-year-long concert venue that, provides free music every summer to the entire region. And, how do we look at that important piece of infrastructure and also that important recreation service that's provided with an accessible lens? So again, polling the community with regard to that, getting some experience, like, have you experienced any barriers? What's really good about this? What's really, poor about this? Where do we need to make some improvements? So yeah, so we got, and then we also did a survey along with our social media engagement. We did some one-on-one interviews, and we also did one-on-ones with stakeholders from the community. Like for example, all the ways we move. We're looking at active transportation, and we're looking at active transit as well. So talking to Strait Area Transit.
You mentioned, Mayor Brenda, the importance of having first-person experience on the committee. And to that end, I want to turn things over to you, Maxine, David, because obviously you have your own personal reasons for being a part of this committee and wanting to improve accessibility in Richmond County. Why did you accept the role of co-chair, and why did you want to be involved in this process in the first place?
Well, I guess one day I was driving up the hill. I have a mobility scooter. And my sister and she was walking and I was driving facing the traffic. And around a corner coming from Arishat, a guy almost hit me. I couldn't get off the road because the road is too high, like it's about 7 inches. And he almost hit me. He turned around, he apologized. And I thought, it's not only just inconvenient to not be able to do things, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too, you have to really think about. It's not just about people that have disabilities, older people, younger people. You have to have it, to me, I think I've said this before, that accessibility prevents disability, because people could get hurt just walking on the side of the road. So that's one of my big things, is that you have to have a place to walk on beside the road, either that you're not on the road and you're not in the ditch, so that you can have a safe place. And there's other things that I've kind of brought up even to the municipality about places that trying to get into places. Can you help people? Like if somebody actually, if a community or a building or whatever wants to put a ramp in, is there a way that we can show them how to do it correctly? Because usually, they spent a lot of money making the ramp, but you have to think of the space before and the space after. So poor Amanda's heard not enough of this. I've complained so much about it. So I was welcomed, like somebody suggested that I try to work with them. So I actually put in an application, and and I really wanted to be part of this. I'm happy to be part of this. And we have a really good group of people, but I think we also need more people with lived experiences to work with us, because I know what I have to deal with, but what do other people have to deal with? And I have different perspective because most of my life I was able-bodied, and I would have never thought of this as problems. I would never thought that this little thing would be a problem, but it is.
Yeah. So much of the time you don't think about it until it happens to you, out of sight, out of mind. So that's one of the reasons it is so important that people are taking on this role. Brenda, you look like you wanted to add something there.
Maxine, you just reminded me of something that I feel like, part of this change around accessibility, sometimes it really has to start with a mindset as well. And one of those mindsets is, why do we build roads? Like, as you were telling your story, I'm like, oh my God. So I think we need to be transformative in terms of, our mindset about, how we build our communities and what our assets are built for in terms of activity, but also who they're built for. And roads really should be built for everybody. And the older concept of building roads are for vehicles, but that's not the case. Today, we have to have a complete street, which means we need streets that are built for everybody in all the ways they move, not just people behind the wheels. So I think, Maxine, your story is so important in terms of that context. So bravo, I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks, Adam.
But I remember we were having a meeting one night, and I said to Amanda, I said, you know that really nice trail that they have going to that's what would be perfect. Not like, okay, if I was going to be doing it, I wouldn't have a sidewalk. The problem with sidewalks, I'm always going to complain about something. There's a bump between, you're going a bump, a bump, a bump. And when they freeze, they go up and down. And that's not just for somebody on a scooter. That's somebody walking, just a regular person walking. And, most of the people at least in Richmond County, we shouldn't say most, but 47% of the people in Richmond County are 55 and over. Mm. So people are getting older, and we're going to 2030. So just a little thing to slip on, So if I had my way, I'd have them all paved, not individual blocks.
Brenda, you've brought up a couple of different spots. You mentioned Granville Green. You mentioned working with Strait Area Transit in terms of areas that need to be addressed in Port Hawkesbury that haven't been addressed in a while. I want to throw that to you, Amanda, and Maxine. I'd like you to be able to answer this question as well, but I'll start with you, Amanda. Were there parts of the investigation that your committee carried out for Richmond County that surprised you or even alarmed or disappointed you in terms of gaps where people needing accessibility weren't finding it in certain parts of the way we live our daily lives here?
Yeah, so I guess probably one of the surprises for me, Adam, was that sometimes our building codes even that speak to accessibility, maybe sometimes they're not enough. That there's more we need to be doing to make sure that people can safely access public sites, in our municipality. Even like the lip that, that ramps might often have at the beginning, the width of them, there's all kinds of considerations. And I know much of this is kind of established in code, but I think that sometimes, over time, how that's implemented. Frankly, before the work of this committee, I kind of would look at a wheelchair ramp specifically, and I would think, oh, that's great that that's there and that makes it accessible. Not always the case. It may have been built at a time before, current modern codes, or there may be some other issue. So I just really think for me that's been the eye opener, is that this is not a thing that's just going to end. It's a process that we have to keep at it, and I think that's why it was so important to have Maxine and Marceline and folks, who experience, life through the lens of disability, in many ways. And so we get that information, whereas I think otherwise it probably would have been missed, right? And I will tell you, we were kind of clever with how we did some of our consultation, because
how's that?
Because we were trying to figure out a way. Remember, Maxine, how do we get this into every house in Richmond County? Like, how do we get that information? And so we did a mail drop to every house in Richmond County on an accessibility card, and encouraged people to fill out our survey. We provided them a phone number to call, so if they weren't comfortable like doing anything online or whatever, they could just call and talk to somebody. And then at the end of the card, it said, by the way, if you self-identify as having a disability, please join our committee. Because just because we're partway through a planning process or whatever, doesn't mean we're closing the door on new people coming in. And I guess that's a message I would really encourage your viewers to hear for this show, is that, if you have an interest in improving accessibility, our committee has an open door, and we would love to add more people with that first kind of hand experience to our group. So yes, we were looking for consultation, but we're always kind of on the lookout for new members who could add even more context to what we're talking about.
Mhm. In that spirit, I'll turn it to you, Brenda, if I could. And as we start to wind down our conversation, I want to ask, where do we go from here? What are going to be the final few stages in terms of putting the plans together in the Strait area to submit to the provincial government? Where is Port Hawkesbury on that now? Basically, what happens in the next couple of weeks?
Sure. So I'd love to just build off of the wonderful feedback that Amanda just gave. I love that concept, and I love that open door process. And just to also add to that, and I'm sure Richmond County very much sees this in the same light. An accessibility plan is always going to be a living document. It's always going to be something you're going to be revisiting and improving on and building as we learn more information from first voice experience. I mean, this is something that we can always go back to and improve. And also, and I guess in terms of looking at the next couple of weeks and how are we going to kind of wind down and present a plan to council for acceptance. We certainly have to make sure that we're prioritizing some of the information that we found. So, I mean, there are only certain things that we have control over in terms of a municipality. So when we're looking at our municipal outdoor and indoor built environments, what are some ways that we can improve those, if barriers have been identified, and then kind of look at them in terms of, okay, what are some short-term priorities, but medium-term, and what are some long-term priorities? And then, of course, kind of present a plan to council. And certainly, because we're in the middle of budget discussions. So I think that it's timely. So the priorities, definitely the short-term priorities, we would certainly want to make sure that council kind of understands where we're coming from our perspective. And I think it kind of lines up in terms of the conversations we've been having so far on both sides of the municipal line. That active transportation piece, I think, is going to be extremely important. So certainly from Port Hawkesbury's side of things, making sure that we're inviting council to really be ambitious around the replacement and repairs of sidewalks and multimodal transportation lanes. I think it's going to, and just because the global pandemic has kind of forced us into this space where we're kind of doing staycations and staying at home more and really enjoying our own communities more. And in order to accommodate that active, healthy living and lifestyle for all ages and all abilities, this is just the right thing to do.
Just wondering, in terms of you, Amanda, can you give me a bit of a quick update as to when we might expect the Richmond plan to go to council?
Our goal is to have the plan come to council before the end of this month. It is a tight timeline. We may have to call a special meeting. We're just kind of waiting to see kind of where the consultants come back with the draft back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And depending on how we feel about that, we'll kind of determine how we proceed with next steps. I guess, the one thing I would say too is that in terms of our commitment going forward, we talked a lot about what's inside and outside of our control. The things like Maxine talked about that are so critical, like road, right? And being able for all people to use roads. These are not directly inside of our control as a municipality, but we still outline them in our plan as things we're going to advocate for. So we didn't just focus on us alone. And I do want to mention also that the Village of St. Peter's has been kind of in this process with us. So we'll have two plans at the end of our process, one for the village and one for the municipality. And I would say what we all agree on is our measure of success here at the end of the day is that all of our citizens can, participate barrier-free in our society. That is what our goal is at the end of the day.
Last word goes to you, Maxine. What has this process meant to you personally, and does it give you some hope and optimism for the future that we could see some long-awaited changes coming to Richmond County?
Oh, I think it's definitely a good thing. And think about when we first started recycling. I mean, 30 years ago, do you think you would have washed your garbage and then thrown it away? It seemed weird. This is going to be the same kind of thing. The provincial government has asked us, the municipalities, to come up with a plan, to come up with some changes, and we're developing codes. So like making a road going through a community, there's people there. You have to have a place for people to walk. So codes also for when you're building ramps or whatever. And I'm just talking ramps, but there's other people that have other disabilities that I have no idea what we have to do. So we have to find out about them, and that's why we want them to join. And for one thing, I wouldn't be on this committee if it wasn't for Zoom. I would not be on the committee if it
True.
wasn't for this pandemic.
Yeah.
And that is kind of strange in itself, like I wouldn't be here doing this. And, that's kind of the good part of the pandemic. If you could say there was one good thing, that more people can be involved, it's more inclusive. So that's one positive thing. So I'm just really happy that I'm working with a group of people that honestly care. And I think it's going to be good for everybody.
Well, we hope we've given everybody in our Telile viewing audience something very important to think about and reminded them that they can still be involved in the process as well.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it has been a real pleasure to talk to all three of you about the plans that you have for your respective municipalities. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Maxine, Amanda, and Brenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care. Nice seeing you, Maxine.
Yeah,
Amanda.
nice seeing all of you.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to our interview guests this week, Maxine David, Amanda Mombourquette, and Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen over the past little while, or you'd like to make some suggestions for future editions of Roundtable, I'd be very happy to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863. And the email address is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your suggestions and commentary. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is info@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile Community Television on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And our YouTube channel features every single edition of Roundtable, including this one, as well as our sister programs Notre Côté and Telile 24/7. For now, I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you very much for tuning in once again, and I look forward to seeing you next time with a brand new edition of Roundtable. Bye for now.